Holloway. Nice to meet everybody. I'm gonna share my screen. I'm got my hoodie on because uh it's like Kiki said, I'm in Houston, but it's like I think like 60 degrees here, and that's like freezing to me. So uh I can't share while another participant is sharing. It's like, there we go. Okay, so I'm gonna share my screen and pull this up. Um, we'll see how long I go. It's kind of broken up in two parts between like my work that I have done and I'm doing, and then work that I have like planned and that I'm kind of in the weeds with. So, um, yeah, we'll go from there. And of course, some of I think Kiki and maybe Maggie have seen this like many times, so I apologize. But I'm also kind of dwindling it down. Everyone can mark their calendar for the was it 2 Fridays from now is we have um a like a happy hour Zoom meet and greet that people can come and hear all about all the different people in our cohort, including Kiki Somerville. So I'm going to play this video. It's a quick 2-minute video where I talk about my work and stuff. The volume might be a little bit low just because I think the volume is low on the video, but yeah.
I've really been proud. So I would say the most visible way that I show my pride is through my artwork. My art touches on things like sexuality, masculinity, beauty, body issues. In my education work, I teach any underserved communities, so victims of sex trafficking, kids in foster care, senior citizens, and mostly people with disabilities. My injury was 17 years ago, and I learned very quickly how what I took for granted and what I didn't before my injury. So I realized what was still needed in the community and what was still lacking, and you learn that very quickly and just live everyday experiences. I'm very proud that I've gone now 17 years out of a spinal cord injury and still am able to thrive and live. But I'm also proud as a queer person of what we've come through as a community. I think we're at a really critical and pivotal time. So I think speaking out on your problems or issues in a constructive way is always going to make an impact just by lived experience.
Okay, that last face I made in that video is ugly. Um, so this is my kind of long-winded kind of write-up of my artist statement. I won't read it all out to you, but basically it talks about how I draw reference from almost like what Jonathan and Kiki were talking about already about like this mass media that we are consuming just incessantly, and even we don't realize it. So a lot of my work is just inherently influenced by that, being both um, uh, male growing up, but also being a gay male, and then having a disability on top of that. Like, what are images that I've just consumed that now influence either how I see myself or how others might see me, and then relating that to other people. I think that, like I say at the bottom, that even though I focus more on like male-centric themes, I think that this is a kind of universal thing that we all struggle with or grapple with, as we talked about earlier. So I'll start talking about some of my work, and I think I've focused on these slides mostly work that I've done in the past 2 or 3 years. If you feel so inclined, you can go to my website, weshollowayart.com, to look at stuff that I've done over the longer amount of time. But I'll just talk about what I've done more recently. These 3 paintings I did in 2019, and the images that I took were from old first aid books from like the 1940s. I thought they were, you'll see later that I do a lot of collage work, so I'm constantly collecting images anyways. But these I thought were really kind of beautiful, just aesthetically, and also they had me start thinking about how images that were mass produced even in the 40s are things that we look at contemporarily like, wow, I would never do this in the medical field. Like, I wouldn't carry somebody like that because that's not how you do it nowadays. Or I wouldn't cut off somebody's circulation at their neck to stop bleeding. So it made me think, like, we'll be looking at things that are quote unquote normal or best practice from 2020. We'll be looking at that in 20 years saying, like, that was so not right. But I also thought they were kind of these beautiful images of male tenderness, and the difference between the taboo of kind of violence and care. I think growing up as a male, you're like taught to like fight and do these things, and these images are not in a sexual way, yet it's caring for another man, and that's still like seen as somehow like less than, or like, what's the hashtag, like no homo. Like, it's like, oh, I'm not going to help out this other guy or touch him because then I'll be seen as homo, which means like less than, or whatever. So yeah, I thought that those brought up some really interesting just conversations, and that's what I talk about. Like, a lot of my artwork is, I'm intrinsically drawn to drawing and painting and putting things on a physical space because they start conversations, and that's kind of what I want in my work. Is I just feel that's the best way for me to, not necessarily like the image to communicate, but for then me to start communicating based on that image, and people find different ways. So make a kind of a longer story short, that these also incorporated cellophane over the top of them. It added an extra element to where people might like start questioning, like, why is that there? What is it for? And then that might lead to, what are these images about? So these 3 paintings I did, they're much larger scale. I was lucky enough to have an artist residency at the Santa Fe Art Institute last year, and it was actually a residency put together. They have residencies every year for different themes, and this one was, I think it was like titled Self-Truths or something like that. So people were coming from all different mediums, all different parts of the country, even Canada, and exploring that theme however they like. And the really cool thing about this kind of program in the Santa Fe Art Institute is that during each of their programs, this was a month-long residency that they accept one individual with a spinal cord injury. So there were 13 people in the cohort, but 3 of us had spinal cord injuries. So we were able to then use our artwork to start these conversations. And usually it's only one person, but there was 3 of us that time. So it was really kind of cool to see even how other people with spinal cord injuries were making work. There's a great comic book artist and illustrator who was there at the same time as I was. He was a paraplegic, so he had hand function. And then there was a woman there who does beautiful writing and poetry, and she was getting into installation work. She had a spinal cord injury that was more so affected the way that she stood, and she made really, really powerful work based on loss and grief, but not due to her spinal cord injury. She had lost her son 2 years ago, so she was kind of working those things out in her artwork, but yet tying it to that. Anyways, so I did some paintings there. They look a little bit different than what I'm used to because it was at the Art Institute, we weren't quote unquote allowed to use toxic materials. When I do my paintings, I usually use oil paint and those mediums. So it was like a branch out to have to use acrylic and things that could be sustainable in that way. So it was a good brain exercise, and yet I think I came out with a lot on it. The images themselves, those were taken from the same book as these. So they look a little bit different, but it's the same source material. So these paintings and drawings, and I think I have to wrap it up soon, don't I? These paintings and drawings are done since we've started our program at the Corcoran. Again, I was tying back some acrylic, but also working with gouache, which I didn't used to like, and now I tend to really love it. And then some drawings that I've done on ink on paper. Again, these images come from Instagram, from internet pornography, and from OnlyFans and the magazines that I collect. So all kind of still same imagery type, but just different mediums and what I'm going with. Here's some more paintings and drawings, and you can see one of my collages on the upper right. And then this is one of the last paintings I did towards the end of the year. And then I won't go in. I'll flip through it quickly, but I don't want to take up too much more time. This is the project that I'm working on currently now, and that I started last semester, that is going to come to fruition at the end of this semester. It's called Reflections of a Surface or a Body. So I'm placing mirrors around the city of Houston. One says, how do you feel about your body? And the other says, how does your body feel? And respondents are able to respond from this QR code to respond to those things. And these are two of the prototype mirrors that I've made that I will be placing around the city. These are some of the locations that I'll be placing them, because I think that all these different areas will garner very different responses. A rehab hospital that I actually went to in Houston, a yoga studio, the Mantra Center, which is a healthcare clinic for LGBT families and youth. Buddies is a gay bar. The West Gray Multi-Service Center is like a public service center for all different incomes and ages. And then the Herman Park, which is one of the largest parks in the country that a lot of people go to, whatnot. this is Robert McClure. He's actually a professor at GW, and I'm lucky enough to be doing an independent study with him right now this semester. He wrote the book Crip Theory, Cultural Signs of Queerness and Disability, and he also wrote Queer Renaissance Contemporary American Literature and the Reinvention of Lesbian and Gay Identities. And so I'm taking an LGBTQ lit class with him, and that's what we're focusing on. And he's so kindly agreed to be a panelist on a talk during the presentation of this work that will be going up in a gallery here in Houston, where my paintings and drawings will go up in conjunction with the mirrors that I have then collected at the end of the semester, so that people can come and see their responses and how maybe there's overlap in how people respond at these different locations, but also how different they can be from place and time, to then therefore spark conversation and